Hello, world, and welcome to a transit chart reading with me, Sarah. It's the 1st of November, and I'm considering waking up earlier to kind of do a daily update. I don't have the ability to predict my energy and how much I'm willing to put into this. But I do get a lot of questions now about astrology, and what I find is people want to know everything I've learned in the past 2 years. And I think this is when someone gets to the point that they want to provide information, um, because there was a period of time where I was asking people if they wanted information and nobody did. And now I've reached this point where people are actually coming to me because they know that I have this understanding of the astrology. And so in order also to help clients to see who I am and how I read the chart, I think this is going to be helpful for me to just continue on this path of learning astrology. So I'm just going to kind of go through where my mind goes when I wake up in the morning and start to meditate over this mandala. So currently it is actually just past 8 a.m. where I'm located in Pensacola in the panhandle of Florida. It's a beautiful day. I think I'm going to go to the beach. And so I probably would be like, let me look at the astrology and see what the beach is going to be like, or what's the overall energy of my day. And what I know now, I went a deep dive into what's going to be happening through the rest of this year, particularly when it comes to Mars and our Martian energy, because last month I was writing a lot about Venus. So with the planets, what we're looking at here is the zodiacal wheel. It is, of course, 360 degrees. And the type of chart that we're looking at is a whole sign house system chart. Or that's the system that we're using is whole sign houses. And that's where each of the houses are divided into 30-degree segments. So you might notice that the sky isn't so defined. The constellations don't line up like this naturally. So this is representational. It's archetypally true. Some people, when you say that, like to relate it with seasons. Seasons are an example of how things can arise and manifest in the physical realm. Depending on where you are, you can have wet or dry season. You can have the 4 seasons that we're accustomed to here in the States, but it's not necessarily like that. And of course, when you flip into the bottom southern hemisphere, the seasons no longer match the archetypes that, the seasons do. So it's a little more complicated than that when it comes to astrology. The way that that's mitigated in some cases is people just read it to be archetypally true and not meant to actually be representative of the season. Anyway, full tangent. This is why it's so hard to talk about this in a video where I'm being succinct. And after having written about astrology for a while now, I have kind of I think, better ability to navigate through it, but it's even easier if I'm just talking about it because this is how I look at the chart. So what we're looking at here is the horizon. So here on the eastern horizon is Scorpio. That's the constellation that's rising during this season at sunrise. So You can see the sun here. It's the big yellow one. Mercury is very near to the sun from our geocentric perspective, and so is Venus. So when we look out at the horizon as the sun is rising, we could see Venus or Mercury, although I do think that they normally would need to be further out ahead of the sun in order for us to be able to see them, because kind of the sun, blinds us to them. But I could be wrong. You might be able to see them. I can't see them because I have my grandparents' house blocking. So when the sun is coming up over the horizon, it's going to cross what's called the ascendant line there, or the line of the horizon. And by midday, the sun will be up here. It'll be a different constellation, but we'll just say that the sun will be at the top of the chart. At sunset, it'll be over here on this side. And then at midnight, moving into the next day, it'll be down here. So that's kind of how the planets move. This chart gets a little more complicated than that, so I'm just going to leave it there. There's two different kinds of motion going on here. This is all from our geocentric perspective and the way the planets appear to move across the sky as they relate to the stars behind them, because of course there's a backdrop of stars that are much further out. So that's how the ancients looked at astrology, and this is how they graphically represented it, you could say. So the reason I'm focused on Mars is because Mars is over here in Gemini, and it will be here in Gemini for the next 6 months. It's traveling backward now, but it's stationed. Before it begins to move backward in Gemini, it's stationed because, we can see planets going around the sun. This is this loop-de-loop I'm doing is just kind of a representation of when that loop-de-loop happens on the side and we have a side view of it, it looks like it's going backwards. Even though I just went in a circle, it just looks like it's going backwards and forwards. So that's kind of how the planets look in the sky when they're doing their thing around us as we revolve all around the sun. So it's an optical illusion. It's called retrograde. You've heard Mercury retrograde. That's descriptive of a type of motion that the planet is making in the sky. Mars retrograde is currently beginning. So Mars is going to go back on the same path that it, came from, like this, to begin that circle. So it's going through what's called its shadow phase. It will return back through the shadow phase, or the shadow path, maybe something along those lines, because that shadow is describing, hey, it's already been here. It's going to go back to 8 degrees of Gemini. It's at 25 right now. It was just about to leave. But in this part of the sky, Mars is going to turn around, and then it will turn back around again and go back through the same path. So during retrograde, we're going to reflect on whatever the planet signifies. So for Mars, it's our kind of raw, primal, eros energy, where we apply our passionate energy. So this can be kind of our will to do things. This can be literal martial activities like martial arts even. Any kind of athletics. It can be to do with the body in that way. That's another thing that Mars signifies or is representative of. And just anything that we desire. This can be sexual too, very passionate, erotic, and can be of the nature of Mars. So things to do with conflict, things to do with war, in Gemini, it's strategic, it's thoughtful, mindful, cerebral, connecting subject and object, communication, messages. This is Gemini, so it's like Hermes or Thoth or Loki. It can be the trickster god. So that kind of energy, and where we're applying our eros, our passions, our desires. All of that's kind of in review, kind of repeating things that happened in September. because September was when Mars was just beginning this path in Gemini. So I've been really focused on Mars. Like I said, last month, Venus was the star of the show. There was a Venus star point in Libra. There was the Cazimi with the sun, which is the Libra star point, but this was the first Libra star point in over 100 years. It's been in Scorpio, so it was a pretty big deal. And at the same time, of course, Venus was moving through her home sign of Libra and then moved directly into Scorpio, which is detriment. It's far, far away from home in Taurus. So it's now creepy. Now it's scorpionic. And Mercury just joined the Halloween party with the Sun and Venus, which have been traversing through Scorpio together. Scorpio is deep, intense, spooky kind of energy. And with Mercury here in Mars's sign, so there's kind of this mutual reception. And I wrote that, I think it was my instructor that says that this kind of mutual reception, meaning Mars is in Mercury's house and Mercury is in Mars's house, is like two drunk people walking each other home, kind of like leaning out on each other. And so that's, you know, an interesting energy where I feel like, well, I'm personally having to take a step back on where I'm putting my passionate energy and really reflecting on that right now, which is very interesting because Mars is stationed and it's in my first house, and my sun is ruled by Mars because I'm an Aries sun. So there's a lot of reflection on where I'm going to, how I'm going to change this character that I am into where I want to apply my energy. How literally I'm having a character shift. I've quit working for my dad and now I'm just doing astrology right now, which isn't going to pay the bills. And so I've got to find some other way to sustain myself. But I'm in this pause phase because I've already planned a trip that I'm going on. So I can't really look for a job and then immediately tell them I need a weekend off. There's just something about that that doesn't sit right with me. And I don't even know that I want a typical 9 to 5. I don't know that I need it right now. And I think I can live a more philosophical life. I think that's what I'm being asked to reflect on. My intellectual desires are in question, whether or not it's feasible, whether or not I can live and sustain myself and pay down my debt while I'm not making a lot of money, but really also not spending a lot of money. So that's what's in question for me. So like I said, Mercury just joined the party. It's in Scorpio. These kind of deep, insightful messages are coming to us. And now Mercury is going to move in Cazimi with the sun, meaning Mercury is going to move into a conjunction with the sun. Since Venus just left a conjunction with the sun, Mercury's moving into one with the sun. I expect that I will be exhausted again. I was exhausted during the Venus Cazimi, and I don't know, but when the sun is in conjunction with these planets, it's almost like it's like burning a hole through them, if you ask me. That's what it felt like with Venus. I'll be interested to experience this Mercury Cazimi because now I'm much more attuned to energy now that I've been looking at charts for so long and being kind of more in depth with that. So the moment or very soon after the Mercury Cazimi, Mars is going to begin moving backward. So the second that in Mars's sign, Mercury and the sun come together, there's going to be this movement finally of Gemini moving back, or sorry, Mars moving backward in Gemini because it's stationed. It's sitting in the same spot to turn around to go in that U-turn. So I'll show you here on the time clock. I have it set for today, But I'm just going to move it forward because you're going to see Mercury move closer to the sun in Scorpio, and Mars is going to be in the same place until that point. So here we go. Forward a day, you see Mercury and the sun 1 degree closer. Well, they're at least moving together. And continue it. But look, Mars is just hanging out there. Okay, and see, it flips a little because there's a shift, but it's just important. Sun and Mercury here together. That's the eclipse point also. That node, that south node there. Mars, look at where Mars still is. 25 degrees of Gemini, still in the same spot. We got Mercury and the sun. Oh, they're so close together. 1 degree. Look, 25 degrees. Finally, these two come together in Mars's sign at 16 degrees. Continues 17 degrees, whereas Mars finally has moved to 24 degrees. So you see it happens that day, November 9th. Here we are, November the 1st, and Mars is not going to budge until the 9th. So this is like the standoff between two cats, especially because it's Gemini. I just got that. Or, cowboy standoff in the West. Very airy and dry. A lot of fire. So I'm going to try to hold out as long as I can on any kind of like passionate outbursts. Just going to try to vent the kettle with some meditation and, inject fun wherever you can. That's what Gemini is about. It's about playfulness and fun. So I said here in my journaling, my chart ruler is next to be burned at the stake, and I can only patiently watch with gracious eyes. My lesson is coming. I must take it with delight, savor it, slurp it, play with it, make it delicious. It's Scorpio, so there's depth, and I'm sensing into this as nitrous oxide for a root canal. Might as well enjoy it because it's happening. So, prepare for this Mars standoff, this pause of where to apply that energy and what really draws us passionately, what we feel in our body that we enjoy doing. This is the build-up to a climax, the almost painful urge to advance over that breaking point. It's all about holding the bowstring back just a little longer. Endurance, patience, and constraint. So, that's the build-up. I'm mentioning that November 9th, that there should be a shift in this energy as Mars kicks it into first gear after waiting at the U-turn for the traffic to pass, which is funny because I wrote today a journal that I'm calling, I think, kicking into first gear, and that's premature. So I couldn't even get the journaling done because a friend of mine called me after I sent her a voice memo this morning. So it's not happening right now. Don't try to punch the gas. Just wait for the traffic to go by. This is that moment that you're waiting and you could go. There's just enough time, but might as well just wait. Don't cause an accident. And then, yeah, at that point after Mercury and the sun come together and Mars finally moves to that 24th degree. Well, the 24th degree of Gemini, according to the Sabian symbol, it says the creative mind is not frozen into uselessness by situations that appear impossibly restrictive to others. So, we begin this creative process of putting very different things together. It's Gemini, so two different things. Gemini is represented by siblings. It's also to do with cousins, neighbors, our early childhood education. Fun. So, yeah, I think we're going to start figuring out where to apply that primal, childlike Martian energy. Whether it's a wound of developed aggression or what toys do I want to make with the tools that I have. It just depends on what area of the chart that it's happening for you. So this is when you buy a reading, when you're wondering, okay, how does that affect me personally? Because what she's talking about sounds like it could apply to anybody. It can, because everybody has a full chart. There's a lot behind, I think, my philosophical understanding of astrology that isn't just this planet causes this. It's not the case for me. So when I look at your chart, I'm looking at specific parts that apply to you. Oftentimes this has to do with your personal story. So offering up some kind of, answers to our questionnaire, because otherwise it's just me, pulling archetypes together for you, which is the purpose of that is so that you can make connections between parts of your brain that don't normally talk to one another. And this is pulling from the creative mind. Your subconscious mind understands and can pinpoint patterns without you even realizing it. So it's just the case that when you think about something, a whole algorithm was, executed in order for that to happen. Somehow your brain knows what collection of thoughts to bring together in order to pick from. I'm just offering additional options for your brain to pick from and draw patterns with. And I think that's a lot about what this energy is going to feel like is, mixing and matching Mad Lib kind of games where you're replacing words and, it's going to be a noun here and a verb here. And when you read the sentence, it's funny or it makes sense. Because, your brain's going to draw on connections. So I'm no neuroscientist. I'm not trying to explain how this stuff works. I don't work with children. I just am very interested in language acquisition and pedagogy and how children learn, because it's reflective of how our species learns. And I'm very interested in anthropology, in biology, evolution, the evolution of the mind, psychology, and philosophy. So all that is going to come out. Then I just wanted to mention too that meanwhile, all this stuff is happening in a Mars ruled sign, Mars, Scorpio. This is a traditional ruler is Mars. And, Mars is in Gemini's house, in Mercury's house, Gemini. At the same time, Jupiter is just dipped back into Aries, because I'm going to go back now to here where we are on the 1st. What's happening with Jupiter? Well, it's just dipped back into Pisces from Aries, the other Mars ruled sign. I'll need to go back even further so you can see that. Jupiter, the big 4 looking glyph. You can see it was in Aries. It's moving in retrograde motion back to its own home sign of Pisces. So it was in Aries before. Aries is this like initiative energy, the soldier, the god of war. Mars ruled. So we've been putting a lot of our effort and seeing results in this area of life where we have been putting our energy, a lot of it, because it's Jupiter, it's expansive, it's growth, and it's the greater benefic. So this is a very fortunate sign. And it's been activating a house for us in our chart where we've been putting our energy in, again, seeing some good results from it. But that area of life is still going under review with our Jupiter areas of life, you could say, or the themes of our life that Jupiter is involved with. And then again, this is very much to do with your own personal chart. To describe, first of all, where's your natal Jupiter? Where's the ruler of the sign of that natal Jupiter? And then now let's look at where Jupiter's transiting with your chart. Which planets is it touching? Which houses is that in? What aspects is that making to other planets and other houses? So it's just like a endless list of the ways that this could manifest in someone's life. But the energy is there, the through line is there, and that's what we as astrologers pick up on, because every day I'm looking at this chart and starting to piece together, well, how is that affecting my life? And then I listen to other people's stories. I'm like, oh, because they're this rising and it's happening in this part of their chart. So I think I'm going to leave it there. As time goes on, there'll probably be less for me to add in, but I enjoy doing this and I want this to be something that I can support myself with, and having this lifestyle allows me to dig deeper into this area of life that needs to be preserved, which is our understanding of what the ancients were doing here. So, every area of life, I think, needs experts to preserve wisdom and knowledge and intuition. So I hope that some of this has helped you, especially if you're not new to astrology. I imagine if you're new to astrology, I'm going to need to get a little bit more organized, technical, and maybe direct. But I hope that you enjoy this energy as we move through the end of this year. So I'll see you again very soon.